Welcome back to Broadway. It's Alex Belfield back on 42nd Street at the fabulous Foxwoods Theatre. It's a new theatre that's home to a brand new production. It's 2 years old now. It's had ups and downs, and I saw it Saturday night, and it is spectacular. It's Spiderman, Turn Off the Dark, and the two stars are Reeve, Carney. How are you?
I'm great. You got an awesome voice.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice of you. So have you, by the way. And Rebecca Faulkenberry, who is Mary Jane in the show. How are you both?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Firstly, I've got to say to you, congratulations on this show. It has had so much press over the last 2 years, which I think has only helped in feeding people's interest in it. I mean, they genuinely seem to want to know, what is it like? What is it going to be? And then you come and you're blown away by the spectacle of it. It is enormous, isn't it?
It is enormous. I think one of the challenges for me was to figure out whether I was supposed to compete with that spectacle or somehow keep it grounded. And I think in the end I found that Rebecca and my job is to kind of keep it grounded for the most part, because there is so much crazy bonkers stuff happening all the time, which is great. It's awesome.
And I love your character, Peter Parker, because we have so much in common, because we're both sort of dorks and outsiders trying to fit in. I'm Ginger. You sort of see where I'm coming from. Why are you laughing, Rebecca?
Not at all. I was going to say, I finished school in Glasgow. I was saying you could be up in Scotland.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I've experienced all different aspects of what I have to do on stage, I guess, in my real life. I think the closest I get to Spiderman is when I'm on stage with my band. That's probably the closest I've ever gotten to that sort of feeling of power. But I definitely experienced a lot of the stuff in high school that Peter Parker experienced, or even earlier than that sometimes. I've always been somewhat naive in some ways and like to kind of hold on to a certain innocence, I guess, which I think I try to bring to the character of Peter Parker, because I kind of see that in him.
And of course, Rebecca, you're the cutie patootie that everybody falls in love with, including the man himself.
So. I try to be. The red wig helps.
It does indeed. So let's talk about this show then. What it is, it's a kid at school who turns into this superhero, and he's sort of torn between saving the planet and falling in love.
Yeah, definitely. I think Peter Parker's struggle somewhat is between responsibility and desire. You know, we all have that. We have things that we desire that may or may not be good for us or for the world at large. And so his goal and his, task, I guess, is to find out how to merge those two things. And I think by the end of this musical, you see that he's on the path to figuring out how to do that.
And with the greatest respect, I've seen everything on Broadway, and I have never seen an actor work so hard, physically, acting-wise, vocally, than you since probably Nathan Lane in The Producers. I mean, they get their money's worth out of you, don't they?
I appreciate that very much. I love working, especially at this job, and I'm just grateful to have an amazing and an incredibly fun job in the arts. So I never take it for granted. So I'm glad that it comes across that I'm putting forth energy.
And tell me, Rebecca, about you and being in this show and having all that behind you and the music and everything else. Is there anything more thrilling?
It's pretty fantastic getting to perform on such a huge stage in front of such a huge audience. We're the biggest, or definitely one of the biggest.
I heard we're the biggest.
The biggest, yeah, theater on Broadway, and stage-wise and audience-wise. And I think what we were talking about before, Reeve was saying to keep our characters grounded, that was kind of ingrained in me when I was being directed into the show, that to not get caught up in the enormity of it and become these cartoon characters, because although we are technically coming out of a cartoon, we have to keep realism, and 'cause that's what helps people fall in love with our love story and sort of stand behind us and want us to win in the end.
And again, I saw the show Saturday night, sellout crowd, and an amazing atmosphere in the theatre. And what I love about Broadway,
crazy audience, right? That audience was crazy on Saturday.
Yeah, there was a school group from Indiana that night, and I always love it when there are 16, 17-year-old girls. That's sort of the
because they love him very, very much. I said, you better be careful at stage door.
They're just really responsive, in terms of the level of volume that they produce with their voices, which is good for actors, because we like to feel like people are having a good time, and it's nice when you can hear that. Obviously, sometimes people are silent and they actually are having a great time, but it's always
every now and then to hear the vocal appreciation is nice. I don't get little boys screaming. Well, not little boys, 15-year-old boys. They don't squeal quite the same as for me as they do for
What is it like to be Hot Reeve and to have girls fancy you? This is another emotion I've never felt.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, Reeve,
I try. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I just love.
He's quite a stylish man. You can't tell on the radio, but he wears suspenders and he has very cool boots. He's quite
You got some
stylish.
cool shoes too. Those are amazing.
Yeah, these are what I call my showbiz shoes, and I bought these in New York, and the shop that I bought them from has now closed like every other store that I seem to love in this town.
Yeah, that happens.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
It's hard to keep businesses going here. Rents are very expensive.
Yeah. I went into a fur store today just because I thought, oh, it's on 30th Street. It looked like it might be kind of like a cheaper fur store. I don't even wear fur because I'm allergic to it. But I wanted to ask what the prices were like. And he said, well, anything from $5,000 to $100,000. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like on 30th Street? Because who's going to go back home to somewhere like in Michigan and be like, oh, yeah, I bought this on 30th Street like for $100,000? Like who's
That's
going
what
to...
people from Michigan sound like.
Well, yeah, that was more like an Indian...
It's like, yeah, Michigan, Japan, something like that. Price. And this show, I mean, had controversy from the beginning because you had U2 behind it. You had U2 as the stars. You had this amazing set and technically brilliant stuff going on that, of course, is going to have teething problems. You get through all of that. And as we sit here 2 years on, how does it feel to have weathered the storm and still being sellout? And, of course, the show now is as brilliant as it could be.
Oh, I mean, there were definitely some hard times in terms of, the preview process. But I think... with any great struggle, generally the light at the end of the tunnel is that much more rewarding. So I think that's the way I feel about it. I'm really glad to be in the show now. I was happy to be in it then, but looking back on what we went through, it's I feel very fortunate to be involved in the show at this point in the run.
There's nothing more magical than hearing word on the street and gossip and people talking. Is it going to work? Isn't it? It only feeds to the success of the show ultimately because people want to be part of it.
Well, I was going to say with that, I think a testament to how good the show is. I think when all the press was really happening around the preview period and when it first opened, go and see if the show has a hold and if someone's stuck in the air flying. And I think that caused a lot of people to come because they just wanted to see if there would be a train wreck, which fortunately there never really was. But you had the holds. And now that we've gotten past all that and now it runs really smoothly, people are still coming in hordes of people. And I think but that's just because the show is good, because it's a really great show. You're not going to come and see a hold or see anything technically malfunction usually because that doesn't really happen anymore.
Right, and as a geeky guy that's seen 15 years of theatre, to look up and see a guy on two wires flying in between another guy on two wires that then flies above another guy on two wires just only plays with the brain. I mean, it's no wonder there were teething problems. The stuff that this show attempts is beyond anything else I've seen in a theatre. I mean, the only comparison is Mary Poppins flies out the end, but it's one woman flying slowly. I mean, you guys are throwing yourselves at each other, and in fact even jumping on each other's back in the air on 16,000 wires.
Yeah, it is pretty nuts.
Did I do justice then? Is that?
Yeah, definitely. And then I'm thinking of another number that I do called Bouncing Off the Walls. That's pretty intense as well because there are actually, I think, 8 dancers controlling the walls. And it looks from the audience that it's maybe mechanical, like it's some sort of computerized thing. But it's sort of this high level of partnering in dance, because they can move the walls wherever they want, and I'm pretty much going to be in the same place. So they're very skilled, these guys. I mean, obviously they're skilled dancers, but they've become skilled puppetry masters as well with these huge, heavy walls. So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff with people crossing lines and, bumping into each other in the air. It's part of the excitement.
And then, of course, you go from the enormity of those flight scenes to just you and him sat on a bench in midair, just singing a beautiful ballad, which is so nice and probably the best song in the show. Well, it is the best song in the show, no doubt.
That is my favorite scene to do in the show, and I think it's because sometimes you can get lost in scenes on stage and you forget that there's an audience there, and you get lost in your character and whatever the situation is going on. But specifically in that scene, because we're hanging in the middle of the air, because it's so dark around us, and we're quite sickly, you can't go anywhere because you're hanging in the air and you're harnessed to the back of the fire escape. It is just like this beautiful little moment that we get in this enormous, vibrant musical. And it's so simple, and like you said, the song is beautiful. And I always say for the Peter Parkers, it's like a lesson in listening because it's such a long song, which I sing most of it, and they're so still and they just listen. And I just get to tell this story through this song, and I think that's probably why it's my favorite.
And congratulations to you both, but particularly to you, Rebecca, because, I mean, it is the one song in the show that you remember that you think, my God, they can sing. And you do need a moment like that, because this is very high energy through most of it and so stunningly spectacular visually that you can often be distracted from the voice or anything else going on.
Yeah, I think it's because it uses a lighter voice. I think, especially in Reeve's sort of big 11 o'clock numbers, you think, oh my God, he's got a crazy voice and it's so loud and it's so powerful. And because it's so simple and it takes a bit, pares it back a bit, that I think you notice the melody of it all.
Yeah, well, the thing for me is that, I mean, I actually have an alternate in this show, so I only perform in 6 shows a week, which is I'm very happy about and very lucky to have that. Jake Epstein does the matinee performances, so I'm here in the building. We're each other's standbys when we're not on, but a few shows do this. I think Evita and Phantom of the Opera do it, and Jesus Christ Superstar, different shows where it requires a lot of physical... there are a lot of physical demands on the performer. They sometimes have an alternate, which is my situation. So I'm still pretty exhausted after the week, but I don't know if I'd be still standing doing eight of these a week.
If you start to get tired, then you're trying to flip upside down and sing, and it would all just be really hard to do.
And of course, from a guy's point of view, as you watch this, you don't get to do much flying right until the end. And then we're thinking, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? Because we get lots of Spider-Men throughout. And then you become the Spider-Man as we see at the end. And we're all thinking, God, I'd love to have a go at that. I mean, there can't be a guy in the audience who doesn't think, what does that feel like to be flying above an audience?
It was cool for me because the stuff that I had to learn first, like bouncing off the walls and the thing I do with Arachne in the air, those are a lot harder than flying around in the audience, at least the flight that I do. So by the time I got to do that, it was just pure joy, as I'm sure it looks. It's like being in a roller coaster without a roller coaster. You just are completely free. And, it requires a bit of thinking. You have to have good body awareness so that you don't start spinning around in the wires, because you can do that. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's a great feeling. Flying around.
I also sat there thinking, where do you go from here? I mean, you're in probably the most spectacular show on Broadway. I can't think of anything bigger. There are some great shows here, but visually it's stunning. And you get to sing and you get to dance and you get to act brilliantly. It's hard to leave this. Is that why you've been in it so long?
So this is my top, you're saying. I'm peaking at this
I'm just
moment.
wondering. I mean, I often wonder that. Once you've been Oprah Winfrey, once you've been Letterman, once you've been Spider-Man, I mean, it's tough to find another gig that's going to thrill you. I suppose you have to go the other way and do something very intimate and small, because how else could you top this?
Well, everyone says, what will you do next? And I always say, I don't know, because it hasn't presented itself or haven't had the audition yet. I think as creative, artistic people, at least for me personally, it's always, what's the next thing that's going to challenge me? What is some creative thing I haven't done yet that I will find exciting?
And as you could hear, we are in the theatre, they are rehearsing, they are getting ready for the show. I would imagine backstage is as much fun as in front of the stage. I almost want to see that show, because there's a lot moving in and out, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there are 200 people working backstage. It's something crazy like that. Am I right?
I think it's more like 150. But still.
Including ushers, I guess. It's like 200 in the building at one time. So there's definitely there are a lot of things going on that no one in the audience sees.
You have to be very aware backstage. You can't just walk wherever you want, because someone might be landing from a flight, or a scenery piece will be coming in and out, and everything is very well choreographed in the timing of when it needs to go and when people can walk. So you can't just meander backstage ever.
And of course, you're both delicious in your own way. You more so, Rebecca, than you, Reeve, but I'll leave it there.
Love it.
We're in a town full of food, and I'm just wondering, you really can't indulge, can you? Because if you were fat, I mean, it wouldn't work, would it?
Well, I'm so lucky, man. I mean, this job keeps me fit. I do.
He's got serious abs. He's got a proper six-pack, which you said you didn't have before, but now.
So have I. I'm just acting to look chubby.
I know you do. I can tell.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely, before the show, I kind of keep my diet relatively consistent. I eat a chicken salad before every show.
All the time, right?
How
Didn't
dull.
You say you have it all the time?
Yeah, before every show, that's what I have. But
I'm so bored for you.
I know that. I mean, that's good. I enjoy it though, but I put avocado in it and a few other different things. But
you heard about the stuffed artichoke at Carmine's? I mean, there's a pre-show
that's
dinner.
The thing. After the show, I eat whatever I want, and I also eat whatever I want for breakfast. So it's only that one meal that I keep relatively lean.
And how about you? How do you keep this?
It's unfortunately a lot of diet and exercise, which I'm not always fond of. But I found in the shows I'd done before this, I danced quite a bit. And I always thought, well, I can't eat a lot between shows, because then I'll have to dance around and then I'll feel sick to my stomach. But I always forget how much I use my stomach muscles and my diaphragm and everything when I'm singing. Right. So in this show, even the same, if I don't have like a salad or a soup or something really light between shows, just all the heavy breathing I do to support my voice when I'm singing, I'll feel sick anyway. Yep. So it's just an unfortunate part of having to do a show. You have to be mindful of when you eat and how soon you eat before the show and what you eat.